When I was in America last, I read a survey, an analysis, actually, a meta-analysis of many surveys done over a 15-year period about American beliefs. And turns out... yeah, fuck the man, yeah. This survey of American beliefs showed that Americans, at a rate of between 48 and 51%, don't believe in evolution, which is like half. And on top of that 50-odd%, a further 38 to 40% of Americans believe that biological evolution has occurred, but believe that it was initiated by and has since been kind of administered by God. Leaving a very small percentage of Americans who are right. It's not my theory. But I've done material about evolution before, and in Australia and in Britain it barely raises an eyebrow. It's just worth a chuckle. But in America it's quite contentious to do comedy about evolution, you know. It gets a gasp. It's the equivalent of doing material about fisting anywhere else, you know. It's quite confronting for them. I've been heckled by a man in the front row in New York loudly defending his disbelief in evolution. I've been pulled aside in foyers by people defending their disbelief in evolution in the same terms, interestingly enough. It's the same defense that the intelligent design movement uses in the high courts of American states to try and sneak its pseudoscience into American high schools. And that defense is always, but evolution is only a theory. Which is true. I mean, it is a theory, and it's good that they say that. I think it gives you hope, doesn't it? That maybe they feel the same way about the theory of gravity. And they might just float the fuck away. However, I think when you lose religion from a society, especially religious ritual, you can easily throw the baby out with the ecclesiastical bathwater. In that, there's some things I think I regret that we've lost, and one of those things is the opportunity for groups of people to come together and share a sense of common purpose, of common belief in song. In music, you know, I think it's a wonderful feeling, that feeling of oneness that you get from sharing beliefs in music. So I've been doing a bit of an experiment on this tour to see if I can't generate a similar feeling in these secular buildings. So I was wondering if you'd be up for a sing. Yay, Sydney! You up for a motherfucking sing? Okay. I love Jesus. I love Jesus. Okay? I love Jesus. Your turn. I love Jesus. Yeah. I love Jesus. Sing it. I love Jesus. That's good. Happy if you like. I love Jesus. Who do you love? I love you. Love Jesus. That's right. Yeah. I love Jesus. Sing it. I love feels good, doesn't it? Yeah, here we go. I love Jesus. Sing it. Love Jesus. Yeah. I hate faggots. Yeah. I hate. I love Jesus. Who do you love? I love. Do you love Jesus? Jesus, yeah. I hate faggots. Who do you hate? You hate dirty fucking faggots, yeah. You hate them. I love cheese. What happened? What happened? I just lost you there. It was all going. It's hard to know where to pick it up. Maybe these are ideas best shared in churches. That went reasonably quite well. It's gone a lot worse. It's always a bit of a worry. You know, it's quite hard coming up with song ideas, you know, because sometimes you think of an idea for a song and it's really great, you know. It seems like a great idea just sitting at home singing along with your wife and kids and stuff, but it's just hard to know where it's necessarily going to translate into the theatre environment, you know. No, I've always been a bit nervous about a song, and the reason I put that rather didactic punchline on the end there is because when I first tried it out, I was in a little club in North London, and I was just doing 15 minutes of new material, and I did my set, and it went fine, and after the set, I was having a drink, and a gay guy came up to me. I knew him vaguely. At the time, he was briefly the boyfriend of a mate of mine, and he said, "Hi, Tim." I said, "Hi, Luke, how you doing?" He said, "Yeah, really good. How do you like the gig?" "Yeah, great, yeah, I've got an idea for you." "Great, okay." I said, what? And he said, "Well, I just had an idea, you know, I had an idea, take it or leave it. I just thought with that Jesus faggot song, it's really funny, but what about if halfway through the song, you've got everyone singing along, I love Jesus, I hate faggots, and then halfway through you just switch it. So they're singing, I hate Jesus, I love faggots." And I was just like, fuck. Fucking homos, they just don't get irony. This next song requires a boot. If you're one of those people that finds the sort of bashing of religion and stuff tiresome or offensive, just give me 5 more minutes. Life is like an ocean voyage, and our bodies are the ships. And without a moral compass, we would all be cast adrift. So to keep us on our bearings, the Lord gave us a gift. And like most gifts you get, it was a book. I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book. I know the good book's good because the good book says it's good. I know the good book knows it's good because a really good book would. You wouldn't cook without a cookbook, and I think it's understood. You can't be good without a good book, cause it's good and it's a book, and it is good for cooking. I tried to read some other books, but I soon gave up on that. The paragraphs ain't numbered and they complicate the facts. I can't read Harry Potter cause they're worshipping false gods and that. And Dumbledore's a poofter, and that's bad cause it's not good. Morality is written there in simple white and black. I feel sorry for you heathens, got to think about all that. Good is good and evil's bad, and goats are good and pigs are crap. You'll find which one is which in the good book, cause it's good and it's a book and it's a book. Yeah, I had a cat, she gave birth to a litter. The kittens were adorable and they made my family laugh, but as they grew they started misbehaving. So I drowned the little fuckers in the bath. When the creatures in your care start being menaces, the answers can be found right there in Genesis chapter 6 verse 5 to 7. Yeehaw! Swing your partner by the hand, have a baby if you can. But if the voices in your head say to sacrifice your kid to satiate your loving God's fetish for dead baby blood, it's simple faith the book demands. So raise that knife up in your hands. Before the good book made us good, there was no good way to know if a thing was good or not that good, or kind of touch and go. So God decided he'd give writing allegoric prose a go. And so he wrote a book, and it was generally well received. The Telegraph said this God is reminiscent of the Norse. The Times said kind of turgid, but I liked a bit with horses. The Mail said lots of massacres, a violent tour de force. If you only read one book this year, then this one is a book, and it is good, and it's a book. Yeehaw! Swing your daughter by the hand. But if she gets raped by a man and refuses then to marry him, stone her to death. You just close your eyes and block your ears to the accumulated knowledge of the last 2,000 years. Then morally, guess what? You're off the hook. And thank Christ you only have to read one book. Just because the book's contents were written generations hence by hairy desert-dwelling gents squatting in their dusty tents. Just because what heaven said was said before they'd leavened bread. Just as Jesus couldn't read doesn't mean that we should need when manipulating human genes to alleviate pain or fight disease. When deciding whether it's wrong or right to help the dying let go of life, or to stop a pregnancy when it's just a tiny blastocyst, there's no reason why we should take a look at any other book but the good book, cause it's good and it's a book, and it's a book, and it's quite good. Whoa. That's fucking. If good is good and evil's bad and kids get killed when God gets mad, you better take a good look at the good book. I'm 33. Yes, Jesus age. And although it's hard, even with the available semi-historic text, to really judge how Jesus was feeling at this significant age, I think I can speak for contemporary males. I don't know if you guys agree. You get to that point in your life, like I think mostly in the early 30s for men anyway, where you start to realize that everything you want to say, everything you want to express in your life can't necessarily be expressed in comedy song. And I think it's at this point in your average man's life when he might choose to write a 9-minute beat poem. This is a 9-minute beat poem. It's called Storm. Inner North London, top floor flat, all white walls, white carpet, white cat, rice paper partitions, modern art and ambition. The host's a physician, bright bloke, has his own practice. His girlfriend's an actress, an old mate of ours from home. And they're always great fun, so to dinner we've come. The fifth guest is an unknown. The hosts have just thrown us together for a favour, because this girl's just arrived from Australia and she's moved to North London and she's a sister of someone or has some connection. As we make introductions, I'm struck by her beauty. She's irrefutably fair with dark eyes and dark hair. But as she sits, I admit I'm a little bit wary, because I noticed the tip of the wing of a fairy tattooed on that popular area just above the derriere. And when she says, I'm Sagittarian, I confess a pigeonhole starts to form and is immediately filled with pigeon when she says her name is Storm. Conversation is initially bright and light-hearted, but it's not long before Storm gets started. You can't know anything. Knowledge is merely opinion. She opines over her Cabernet Sauvignon vis-a-vis some unhippily empirical comment made by me. Not a good start, I think. We're only on pre-dinner drinks, and across the room my wife widens her eyes, silently begs me, be nice. A matrimonial warning not worth ignoring, so I resist the urge to ask Storm whether knowledge is so loose weave of a morning when deciding whether to leave her apartment by the front door or the window on her second floor. The food is delicious, and Storm, whilst avoiding all meat, happily sits and eats as the good doctor slightly pissedly holds court on some anachronistic aspect of medical history when Storm suddenly insists, but the human body is a mystery. Science just falls in a hole when it tries to explain the nature of the soul. My hostess throws me a glance. She, like my wife, knows there's a chance I'll be off on one of my rare but fun rants, but I shan't. My lips are sealed. I just want to enjoy the meal, and although Storm is starting to get my goat, I have no intention of rocking the boat. Although it's becoming a bit of a wrestle because, like her meteorological namesake, Storm has no such concerns for our vessel. Pharmaceutical companies are the enemy. They promote drug dependency at the cost of the natural remedies that all our bodies need. They are immoral and driven by greed. Why take drugs when herbs can solve it? Why use chemicals when homeopathic solvents can resolve it? I think it's time we all return to live with natural medical alternatives. And try as I like, a small crack appears in my diplomacy dike. By definition, I begin, alternative medicine, I continue, has either not been proved to work or been proved not to work. Do you know what they call alternative medicine that's been proved to work? Medicine. So you don't believe in any natural remedies? On the contrary, Storm, actually, before we came to tea, I took a remedy derived from the bark of a willow tree. A painkiller that's virtually side effect free. It's got a weird name. Darling, what was it again? Masprin? Oh yeah, aspirin, which I paid about $1 for down at the local drugstore. The debate briefly abates as my hosts collect plates, but when they return with desserts, Storm pertly asserts, Shakespeare said it first. There are more things in heaven and earth than exist in your philosophy. Science is just how we're trained to look at reality. It doesn't explain love or spirituality. How does science explain psychics, auras, the afterlife, the power of prayer? I'm becoming aware that I'm staring. I'm like a rabbit suddenly trapped in the blinding headlights of vacuous crap. Maybe it's the Hamlet she just misquaffed, or the 6th glass of wine I just quaffed, but my diplomacy dike groans and the asshole held back by its stones can be held back no more. Look, Storm, sorry, I don't mean to bore you, but there's no such thing as an aura. Reading auras is like reading minds, or tea leaves, or star signs, or meridian lines. These people aren't plying a skill. They're either lying or mentally ill. Same goes for people who claim to hear God's demands and spiritual healers who think they've got magic hands. By the way, why do we think it's okay for people to pretend they can talk to the dead? Isn't that totally fucked in the head, lying to some crying woman whose child has died and telling you you're in touch with the other side? I think that is fundamentally sick. Do we need to clarify here that there's no such thing as a psychic? What are we, fucking two? Do we actually think that Horton heard a who? Do we still believe that Santa brings us gifts, that Michael Jackson didn't have facelifts? Are we still so stunned by circus tricks that we think the dead would want to talk to pricks like John Edward? Storm, to her credit, despite my derision, keeps firing off cliches with startling precision, like a sniper using bollocks for ammunition. You're so sure of your position, but you're just closed-minded. I think you'll find that your faith in science and tests is just as blind as the faith of any fundamentalist. Wow, that's a good point. Let me think for a bit. Oh wait, my mistake, that's absolute bullshit. Science adjusts its views based on what's observed. Faith is the denial of observations so that belief can be preserved. If you show me that, say, homeopathy works, then I will change my mind. I will spin on a fucking dime. I'll be as embarrassed as hell, but I will run through the streets yelling, "It's a miracle! Take physics and bin it! Water has memory, and whilst its memory of a long-lost drop of onion juice seems infinite, it somehow forgets all the poo it's had in it." You show me that it works and how how it works, and when I've recovered from the shock, I will take a compass and carve fancy that on the side of my cock. Everyone's just staring now, but I'm pretty pissed and I've dug this far down, so I figure, in for a penny, in for a pound. Life is full of mysteries, yeah, but there are answers out there, and they won't be found by people sitting around looking serious and saying, isn't life mysterious? Let's sit here and hope. Let's call up the fucking Pope. Let's go watch Oprah interview Deepak Chopra. If you want to watch telly, you should watch Scooby-Doo. That show was so cool because every time there was a church with a ghoul or a ghost in a school, they looked beneath the mask, and what was inside? Oh, a fucking janitor or the dude who ran the water slide. Because throughout history, every mystery ever solved has turned out to be not magic. Does the idea that there might be knowledge frighten you? Does the idea that one afternoon on Wikipedia might enlighten you frighten you? Does the notion that there might not be a supernatural so blow your hippie noodle that you'd rather just stand in the fog of your inability to Google? Isn't this enough? Just this world? Just this beautiful, complex, wonderfully unfathomable natural world? How does it so fail to hold our attention that we have to diminish it with the invention of cheap man-made myths and monsters? If you're so into your Shakespeare, lend me your ear. To gild refined gold, to paint the lily, to throw perfume on the violet, it's just fucking silly. Or something like that. Or what about Satchmo? I'll see trees of green, red roses too. And fine, if you wish to glorify Krishna and Vishnu in a post-colonial, condescending, bottled up and labelled kind of way, then whatever, that's okay. But here's what gives me a hard on. I am a tiny, insignificant, ignorant bit of carbon. I have one life, and it is short and unimportant, but thanks to recent scientific advances, I get to live twice as long as my great-great-great-great uncles and aunts. Twice as long to live this life of mine. Twice as long to love this wife of mine. Twice as many years of friends and wine, of sharing curries and getting shitty at good-looking hippies with fairies on their spines and butterflies on their titties. And if perchance I have offended, think but this and all is mended. We'd as well be 10 minutes back in time for all the chance you'll change your mind. I really like Christmas. It's sentimental, I know, but I just really like it. I'm hardly religious. I'd rather break bread with Dawkins than Desmond Tutu, to be honest. And yes, I have all of the usual objections to consumerism, to the commercialization of an ancient religion, to the westernization of a dead Palestinian press ganged into selling PlayStations and beer. But I still really like it. Forward to Christmas, though I'm not expecting a visit from Jesus. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I don't go in for ancient wisdom. I don't believe just 'cause ideas are tenacious it means that they're worthy. I get freaked out by churches. Some of the hymns that they sing have nice chords, but the lyrics are dodgy. And yes, I have all of the usual objections to the miseducation of children who in tax-exempt institutions are taught to externalize blame and to feel ashamed and to judge things as plain right or wrong. But I quite like the songs. Not expecting big presents. The old combination of socks, jocks and chocolates is just fine by me. 'Cause I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. And you, my baby girl, my jet-lagged infant daughter, you'll be handed round the room like a puppy at a primary school, and you won't understand, but you will learn someday that wherever you are and whatever you face, these are the people who make you feel safe in this world. My sweet blue-eyed girl, and if my baby girl, when you're 21 or 31 and Christmas comes around and you find yourself 9,000 miles from home, you'll know whatever comes. Your brothers and sisters and me and your mum will be waiting for you in the sun whenever you come. Your brothers and sisters, your aunts and your uncles, your grandparents, cousins, and me and your mum will be waiting for you in the sun, drinking white wine in the sun. Darling, when Christmas comes, we'll be waiting for you in the sun, drinking white wine in the sun, waiting for you in the sun, waiting for you, I really like Christmas. It's sentimental, I know. Thank you so much. I guess the reason I brought that up, I guess what I'm saying is if anyone has been offended so far by anything, if you're the sort of person that finds any of that sort of stuff objectionable, or for that matter, if you're a religious person, might want to pop out for about 5 minutes. This is a song about anal sex and God. It's called 10-Foot Cock and a Few Hundred Virgins. So you're gonna live in paradise with a 10-foot cock and a few hundred virgins. So you're gonna live in paradise with a 10-foot cock and a few hundred virgins. So you're gonna sacrifice your life for a ride on a UFO. And when the Lord comes down in his shimmering chariot of salvation, you're gonna be the first to know. Oh. And so if God was there from the very beginning, he invented men and women, then he also invented wanking, then he said wanking was sinning. So now if I'm feeling randy, I'm not allowed to hand shandy, but having sex with my family, that is just fucking great. It's all there in Ezekiel 8. And just before he opens up his big pearly gate and says that it's a sin to take it up to date, even if it's great, even with your cowboy mate. So you're gonna live in paradise with a 10-foot cock and a few hundred virgins. So you're gonna sacrifice your life for a shot at the greener grass. And when the Lord comes down with his shiny rod of judgment, he's gonna kick my heathen ass. Oh. So if you cover the bodies of your women, everybody is grinning because black is so slim, and though it's not great for swimming, but it gives you an erection with the increased sexual tension. What with the UV protection, that is second to none. You'll find it all in the Quran, just next to the bit that justifies guns and says that it's a sin to take it up the bum, even if it's fun, even with permission from your mum. So you're gonna live in paradise with a 10-foot cock and a few hundred virgins. So you're gonna sacrifice your life for a shot at eternity. And when the Lord comes down and I haven't done my penance, he's gonna disembowel me. Oh, you say that if I stumbled on a watch, I'd assume it had a watchmaker, that a muffin presupposes a baker, so we must agree sooner or later that this proves there's a creator. So if I put my foot in a stinker, you'd assume the existence of a sphincter, thus you don't need to be a great thinker to conclude that God's a bum, which negates the words of Genesis 1, which make him out to be so much fun, until Adam succumbed to temptation, and then his only son got nailed to a gum, or the Middle Eastern equivalent, which suggests that God's omniscience is nullified by his ambivalence, unless it turns out that he's impotent, and if God can't get a boner, I guess that explains the plethora of huge erections in his honor, because we all know a steeple's just a subconscious compensatory manifestation of a huge stiff penis, and still he tells us that it's heinous to stick a penis up your anus, even if you're famous, even if you're good at tennis. So you're gonna live in paradise with the 10-foot cock and a few hundred virgins. So you're gonna sacrifice your life for a ride on a UFO. And when the Lord comes down with his big, stiff, slippery rod of judgment, oh, I'm gonna be the first to go. He's gonna send me down below. He's gonna whip me like a hoe. Do you really think so? I'm gonna be the first to go. Thank you. Sometimes because material like that doesn't necessarily respect entirely some of the idiosyncrasies of a couple of the major monotheistic doctrines. People make the assumption upon listening to such material that I'm not religious myself, which is pretty spot on. But it's sort of beside the point. I don't want to be divisive, you know. And besides, I think you can be spiritual. I think you can have a deep sense of spirituality without actually adhering to any of the major religions. As it turns out, I'm not at all spiritual. I've just got this real sense of emptiness. But I believe in things, you know. I believe in rocks and gravity, and I have like a relativist morality, which I can manipulate to suit my worldview, so that I can justify group sex, for example, whilst abhorring group prayer. Works for me. But you have to admit, really, ironically, I guess, given all the religious violence in the world, one of the things that actually binds us all, that we all have in common across all cultures and indeed all time since the beginning of recorded thought, is this tendency to invoke the supernatural to help us explain those things in our lives which we find difficult to explain using only the evidence at hand, you know. A modern example of this, I saw on telly recently a show about, it was called, I think it was Miracles in the Womb, or Extreme Wombs, or something, Changing Wombs. It wasn't that. But anyway, it was about multiple births, and a woman had given birth to naturally conceived identical quadruplet girls, which is very rare. And she said, the doctors told me there was a 1 in 64 million chance that this could happen. It's a miracle. But of course, as we know, it's not, because things that have a 1 in 64 million chance of happening happen all the time. To presume that your 1 in 64 million chance thing is a miracle is to significantly underestimate the total number of things that there are. Maths. It's interesting, actually, now that I live overseas, it struck me anew when I came back to Australia this time that here this compulsion towards the supernatural and the mystical seems to manifest itself mostly in Australia in the presence of bumper stickers. You know the ones I'm talking about? They're usually purple, and they generally imply the existence of a benevolent spirit of some sort looking after us all, and especially the people who bothered to put the sticker on their bumper. They say things like the goddess is dancing, and my favourite probably is don't drive faster than your angel can fly. As if of all the possible restrictions an angel might face, speed is the... Unless they're just proposing the possibility of the existence of unfit angels. And probably the one that annoys me most, because it's most common, I think, is, I'm sure you've all seen it, magic happens. Magic happens, they usually sparkle. I don't know what it is about magic happen stickers on cars, but every time I see one, I want to get out my permanent marker and sort of sneak over and write underneath it, so does cot death. Under which a spiritual person with their slightly more ephemeral marker might choose to write something like, yeah, but sometimes the magician has to do bad magic in order to, A, test our faith, or B, for the purpose of a greater good. Under which someone like me, with their permanent marker, might choose to write something along the lines of, fuck off. Thus ending an otherwise perfectly sensible bumper-based philosophical argument. I have a particular religious friend I go head-to-head with and get very boring at dinner parties with on these sort of big questions, and he always sort of seems to think that to be sceptical is to be cynical, and that my view of the world sees no beauty, which I always argue is not the case. I mean, I find the world a really exciting place. There are ideas that are a bit more sciencey, that are just as exciting as the kind of magic-y ones, you know, like the one of the greatest ideas of all time, evolution, the theory of natural selection, you know. Not only is it, how would you say, right... I'm just practicing my timing for my American tour. Pause, right, and duck. Duck. No, I mean, not only is it good science, but it's also really thrilling, don't you think, this idea that an individual of a species can be born sort of mutated in a good way. And in the moment of that individual's birth, it holds within its genetic code the potential for its entire species to take a huge evolutionary leap forward. It's amazing. And I always think, what would life have been like being one of those individual mutant freaks? You know, what did the other kids think? Imagine being the first dude ever to have feet. I reckon that would be really tough. And also, what I wonder is, how did these individuals with their new bits, like, how did they figure out how to use them? Did they just stumble upon their potential purpose one day, just accidentally, you know? Imagine you're a fish, and you're just swimming in the ocean with your school, and you're all just hanging out, swimming, same as always, because you're fish. And suddenly, out of nowhere, Tony... Fucking Tony. Tony just goes, I'm getting out. Yeah, I'm freezing. You're a fish, Tony. Yeah, well, I'm a cold fish. I just want to pop out for a bit, you know, maybe lie on my towel. I'll bring you an ice cream. Yeah, don't bother, Tony, you're a freak. Come on, school, let's go. Let's ostracize him for being different. Yeah, let's ostracize him. Tony's a freak. Let's ostracize him for being different. No, don't ostracize me. I'm just a little bit different. Oh, bugger you then. I'll show you guys. Fuck me. Those are going to come in handy. And imagine what Tony would think, standing there on his brand new feet, on the brink of the beginnings of mankind as we know it. If he could look forward just a few short hundreds of millions of years to see one of his descendants, an Israeli Jew by the name of Jesus, having a nail hammered through his feet. The very feet that Tony provided him with as a punishment for having a sort of schizophrenic discourse with a god who was created by man to explain the existence of feet in the absence of the knowledge of the existence of Tony. I think that would blow his little fishy mind. This religious friend of mine, arguments often end with him telling me that I'm not very open-minded. And because he's my friend and I respect him, I've written him a song. It's called If You Open Your Mind Too Much, Your Brain Will Fall Out. Which I think is brilliant. It's so clever. Unfortunately, I didn't come up with it myself. I read that in a book. So to avoid copyright issues, I've given it a subtitle, which is, Take My Wife! If anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single psychic who's been able to prove under reasonable experimental conditions that they are able to read minds. And if anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single astrologer who's been able to prove under reasonable experimental conditions that they can predict future human events by interpreting celestial signs. And if anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single homeopathic practitioner who's been able to prove under reasonable experimental conditions that solutions made up of infinitely tiny particles of good stuff dissolved repeatedly into relatively huge quantities of water have a consistently higher medicinal value than a similarly administered placebo. And if anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single spiritual person who's been able to show either empirically or logically the existence of a higher power with any consciousness or interest in the human race, or ability to punish or reward humans for their moral choices, or that there is any reason other than fear to believe in any version of an afterlife, I will give you my piano, one of my legs, and my wife.